Hello my fellow Archons, and welcome to another video. We're back with another Grim Reminders house analysis video, and this time we're tackling the big guys over in House Brobnar. They've had a pretty shaky history on the Crucible, but since Winds of Exchange and now here in Grim Reminders, Brobnar truly has settled itself as an absolute powerhouse and a very desirable faction to open. Without further ado, let's dive right in. Well, this is Grim Reminders, so we've got to start off by taking a look at how Brobnar interacts with the Haunted mechanic, pivotal to this set. As per usual, being haunted typically unlocks new abilities and cards. Soulbound can trigger, Awakened Titan can ready, Lash Out deals extra damage, and Blunderbore makes your opponent lose more Ember. Honestly, Brobnar's relationship with being haunted is pretty simple. They can do lots of cool things if you're not haunted, but can do even better things if you are. Easy as that. Now, being Brobnar, it doesn't have a whole ton of efficiency, meaning early game it can't get you haunted that quickly, outside of things like Mournful Barnburner or Raider of the Peaks, or the reprint Sound the Horns. You may have to rely pretty heavily on other houses to get you haunted so Brobnar can really start popping off. Other cards that want you haunted include Thunderdell, Returning Champion, and Fight to the End, so a respectable amount. Interestingly, they have one single card that wants your opponent to be haunted, an aspect seen mostly in Unfathomable, Countryside Crusher, with his fight ability. But either way, Brobnar does some very nasty things all the time, but even nastier things when you're haunted. It's very straightforward. How about board control? Well, it is Brobnar, so you know it's their specialty. Lash Out is a phenomenal source of direct damage, a simply better version of Punch from back in the day, and is so good at taking out pesky elusive creatures or ones hiding behind taunt. Fiery Jark is bouncing Death Quirk but at common, and attached to a creature. You can deal with pretty much any creature you want with this guy, circumventing Briarsorch as well. Concussive Transfer is another insane card, allowing you to put all the damage currently on the board wherever you want, while adding 3 to it no less. Literally, you could essentially heal your entire damaged battle line and deal all that damage to the opponent's creatures. Just crazy. Berserker Slam and Cannon both return to the ring, with things like Down to Size comboing excellently with them. Direct damage is all well and good, but Brobnar has always been known as the fighting house, the house with big beefy giants that yearn for a good brawl. Well, the creature size in Grim Reminders certainly does not disappoint. Awakened Titan at 10 power, Rickety Cybergiant at 11, Returning Champion at 10, Heavyweight Morik at 8, Blunderbore and Mournful Barnburner each at 6, Earthshaker and Crim Torchtooth both return at 7, and Lifting Buddy just power boosts all these guys even more. And these creatures don't just sit on the board, they fight like crazy and reward you for it. Brick Nasty, a fan favorite, returns, along with the classic War Chest and Looter Goblin. Shockherder lets you get instant use out of your creatures, as does the new card Cacophonous Riot, which readies and enrages a creature and each of its neighbors. It's just bananas the sorts of things Riot enables. Their burst potential is huge, and even if you're not using it on your own creatures, you can still enrage enemy creatures, potentially disrupting your opponent. And that's not all. Have you ever wanted to make your opponent discard random cards from their hand while you're wrecking their board? Brawling Grounds lets you do that. And yes, that's an Omni ability, so you get the pleasure of doing that no matter what house you've called. Final Refrain is a hugely explosive card, almost acting as a one-sided board wipe when you're deep into your deck. And speaking of explosives, the big one and its fuse counters returns, destroying literally everything. We've got Assault, we've got Splash Attack, we've got Off-House Fighting, and we've got straight up removal. Have you ever wanted all of your giants to enter play ready? Beanstalk lets you do that, while also putting one into your hand from wherever you want. I mentioned this card in a recent video about Grim Reminders and the ways I would fix it. This is one of the ways I would fix it. I'm all for strong and crazy cards, but this one is just a little too over the top in my opinion. So, once you've finished ravaging your opponent's board, what's next? Let's take a look at their Ember control. They are not weak in this area either. Like I mentioned before, Berserker Slam is back, and reprinted with it is Burn the Stockpile, a fantastic card. There's also Iron Obelisk for some key taxing. Blunderbore is great for some key control, and Forgemaster Ah can come out of nowhere sometimes. But one of its greatest cards in this regard is the new Memorialize the Fallen. It causes each player to lose Ember equal to the number of creatures in their discard pile, which can easily be upwards of 10, 15, 20 or more. Timed right, it's almost like a one-sided superpowered Shatterstorm. It's such an insanely strong Ember control card, thank goodness it's limited to 1 per deck. Let's just say matches with 2 copies present can start dragging sometimes, especially with all the recursion in the set. And lastly, they have their Curse, the Curse of Cowardice, a truly brutal artifact that can cause your opponent to lose 1/3 of a key turn after turn. Indeed, Brobnar is no slouch when it comes to Ember control either. They have a number of other tools at their disposal as well, one of which is Disruption. I already mentioned Brawling Grounds, but another one, a rather infamous one at common, is Recklessness. I almost see it as half a punctuated Equilibrium, which is so good, and it enhances some pips on top of that. In multiples, Recklessness is absolutely savage, destroying hands and game plans and cycling through your deck to more Brobnar cards, potentially triggering scrap effects along the way. Speaking of scrap effects, this might be one of the very few weaknesses Brobnar has, because their scrap effects are nothing special. Usually they're damage or fight based, which makes sense in the case of Countryside Crusher, Heavyweight Morik, Ornar Skullface, and to an extent Roarix Screamer, whereas Barnburner gets you haunted slightly faster. These scraps still have some decent tools and synergies though, so they're definitely not useless. Brobnar does have a tiny bit of artifact control in the form of Barehanded and the big one, along with the truly magnificent key cheat, Might Makes Right, reprinted from way back in the days of Age of Ascension. With so many huge creatures throughout the set, especially in Brobnar itself, MMR is insanely easy to pull off, a beautiful free key. It has so much support in this set, far more than it did in AOA, with creatures in other houses like Webster, Sandworm, Thing from the Deep, and Belligerent Guard. With the massive amounts of recursion available, you can archive MMR itself with Mehmet, Target, etc., and archive entire boards of creatures with Winds of Death. Done right, you may be able to forge multiple free keys in one game with this single key cheat. So in the end, Brobnar has board control, Ember control, disruption, sticky board presence, a touch of artifact control, and a bonkers key cheat. What does it lack? Where could it possibly fall short? Well, there are a couple areas that I've mentioned briefly already. They have a lack of efficiency, meaning it can take a while for them to get haunted, where they shine the brightest, from their own volition. You've got things like Recklessness, Sound the Horns, Old Boomy, and Plummet, but not much else. Sometimes you may really need to be haunted in order to trigger Soul Bomb and wipe the opponent's witch-filled board, but you just can't quite get there. That's happened to me a few times. Or I need Blunderboard to destroy 2 of the opponent's Ember, but can only destroy 1 because I just flipped my discard pile. Its scrap effects are pretty mediocre. Again, they're not awful, but they're not great either, Ornar Skullface being my favorite among them. Another thing it can suffer from is bad reprints. There are some cards that I just can't understand why they were reprinted, chief among them the Aigon pair, the Green and Terrible. They're finicky and require way too much effort for very minimal payoff. They're just not good. Yo Mama Mastery is super random, Follow the Leader and Brothers in Battle are both somewhat situational, and Cannon just feels kinda underpowered compared to the rest of the direct damage available in the house. But besides those few points, Brobnar has very few flaws in Grim Reminders. It's an absolute powerhouse, a faction you're never sad to see when cracking a deck, and can be truly oppressive with ideal lineups. It'll destroy your Ember, destroy your board, and destroy your hand all in one fell swoop, then forge a key for free at the end of it all just to add insult to injury. It can have its creatures interplay ready, make you lose 18 Ember at once, target anything it wants for destruction, and gain Ember while doing so. It's been cranked up to 11 this set. The ferocity is there, and I really hope to see their fire continue into the next set. And there we have it, House Brobnar and Grim Reminders. They're back. Whatever fears we may have had about their return after their tragic showing in Worlds Collide have been thoroughly and wholly quenched, and I truly hope their next appearance in Ember Skies can live up to what we've seen here, although I have some reservations to be perfectly honest. A lot of what we've seen so far hasn't looked like anything too special, and it was also mentioned that it'll be the Goblins' time to shine this time around, which I'm not so sure about. Let me know what you guys think about Brobnar and GR down in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you all again in the next one. See you later.